Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we are actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can still all be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming, and we have a very special guest today, Mary Kerwin. Welcome to Imperfect Momming.
Oh, thanks for having me. I am more than delighted to be here and share. I thank you for sharing your audience with me.
Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, so I'm Mary Kerwin, and I was a teacher in the New York City school system, a classroom teacher for more than 40 years, more than 45 years, a job that I absolutely adored in the classroom, outside the classroom, not so much. And I reluctantly retired and fell apart for a little bit and decided to keep doing what I was doing in the classroom, out of the classroom, which was to help kids and parents find their confidence so that they can build on that, the skills they need to build confidence so that they can take on the challenges of this world. And I believe that confidence is a skill set that needs to be learned, that is learned, and that we are doing not such a great job of teaching it. I'm a mom, I'm a grandmom, I'm a mom to 4 grown children, and I'm a grandmother, which is a job that I never thought I would love as much as I do. I don't know why I didn't think that, but yes. And so I founded Confident Families, which is developed to help parents and their kids become confident leaders for their kids so that they can pass it on to them, and we can have leaders who make this world a better place.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I'm curious, what do you see as the number one thing that parents lack confidence in?
My main premises is that you need to trust your gut.
Mm.
That there's no two families, no two children, no two situations that are alike, and if we trusted our gut more and went with what we felt instead of what we're being told to do or told not to do, that things would be a lot, you'd be a lot smoother in the family, that you would be a lot happier, and the relationships would build instead of crack.
I'm also curious about kids, but before I ask you what the kids struggle with as far as confidence, there's a I don't know. I don't know when it started, but there's kind of a TikTok trend where people are saying immediately no. Like that's the phrase, those 2 words, immediately no. So something happens, you're presented with this opportunity, with this, situation, and your gut reaction is immediately no. And I learned about this yesterday because my son and my nephew went to camp, and they're 2 months apart. So they're 10 years old. This is the first time they've been to camp. This is the first time this is the first time for my son that he's been gone for 6 days with 0 communication with
First
me.
time for you that they're gone?
He's been gone before, but we've been able to communicate. So there's been a phone or, something. And right now we don't have any kind of communication. They're not allowed to have the phones. They, if they're homesick, they just kind of use distraction techniques instead of, hey, let's call mom. And so the likelihood that he and I are going to talk in the next 6 days is pretty much 0. And I think this is the longest also that my nephew's been away from his parents. And so when we signed them up, we wanted them to be in the same cabin, and something happened where they got put in different cabins. And when my brother heard that, he said immediately no. And it's just like the reason I bring it up is it's kind of that intuition that we stop listening to in our life, where we become people pleasers and we become, you know, these, I guess people pleasers is like the thing that happens where we'll hear immediately no in our head, but or feel it in our body or feel it in our heart, but we'll say yes because we feel like that's what we're supposed to do. That's what will make that person happy or keep them from being unhappy, right?
To in a better light in their frame of mind. Yeah. Immediately no.
Exactly.
Immediately no can also be a reaction to something you're afraid of. And that's different than being a
Correct.
gut. When it's your gut, you know it's your gut. And my advice is to go with it,
Yeah.
because when you second guess yourself, you are putting yourself in a state of stress and worry and all the what ifs and if I only. You know your kid, and you know what is immediately no for them. And yes, there are probably 500 reasons that the camp can give you that this is better for them, so that they develop their own friends, so that they don't lean on each other. But if your reaction is immediately no, I mean, that's the one I would go with. That's I haven't heard that. This is the first time I'm hearing it, but I like it.
Yeah, yesterday was the first time I'm
I
hearing it. I've said it wrong at least 30 times already, but it's like, no, I love immediately no, because we don't we don't operate that way enough. And it takes time to develop, to understand if you've lost that inner voice, where
Or
if you've
if it was
lost listening to it, right, it'll take some time to understand the distinction between the fear immediate no and the gut immediately
if
no,
it's the
right?
fear, usually you say immediately no, and it kind of goes
Lingers.
away. The fear will go away when you say no to
Yeah.
the. If you say, if it's a gut reaction, if you don't say no, it stays there. It stays there with you. I don't say immediately. I say that's a hard no.
Yeah.
That's a hard no for me.
For
That's
immediately no, what I would say is, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no.
okay. Yeah,
But
but that's
immediately no is much more
that's really
concise.
that's really right in the gut. That's I like that a lot. Yeah, I might steal it from you. Or from TikTok, or
So
from wherever, whomever. Yes.
yeah, right. From TikTok, whoever. Yeah, I give you permission. It's not mine, but you can have permission to steal it. And so what do you see is the biggest struggle that kids have inside confidence?
Inside, these poor babies. I started teaching back in the days that the dinosaurs roamed the earth, where
Hmm.
the emphasis was on the whole child. Like you educated the whole child. Academics was important, but if you didn't have everything else in place, academics just wouldn't flourish. And I saw it, and I still it continues to move away from that whole child experience to the grade at the top of a page. So the kids are being assessed on everything, starting from when they're in preschool. Everything is an assessment. Everything is their ability to make mistakes is lessened because they're going to be graded on it, or they're going to be assessed for it. So that's a part of it. But the other side to it is that there are skills that you need to learn to be confident. You need to learn acceptance of yourself and your limitations. Not that you can't change them, and of other people, and resilience, and connecting to your core values, so you are the person who you want to be. And we have a big role in that. And dreaming, it's when the kid says, I'm going to be a firefighter, or I'm going to be an astronaut. Oh, you're not going to, you know how much work that's going to take. It's dem- demeaning or diminishing their confidence. And the studies show that it used to happen around 9. It used to happen, and then that's understood because they're going out into the big world. But it's trending downwards, and now it's 5 and 6 that you've seen the 4-year-old or the 3-year-old go out there and belt out a song and dance and out of tune and out of step, like they were the greatest things in the world. And then by the time they're 5 or 6, they don't have that. They don't have that. And to me, that's my
Well,
mission. And I deal with parents so that I can get to the kids, to help them know that they don't have to be great at everything, that they could do it anyway, that if they enjoy it, it should be done, that they don't have to do everything, and that the grades are not as important as the adults think they are. No
yeah.
one is going to ask you what you got on a fifth grade math test when you're going for a job. No one cares.
Yeah, and I remember hearing a statistic that when children enter kindergarten, that 90% of them are confident, and that when they leave high school, that 90% of them are not confident. So it flip-flops sometime between, the kindergarten and graduating. And I've seen it a little bit in my son. He, like I said, he's 10, and it's interesting to me when he'll say things like, I'm afraid I won't have any friends. And I've reminded him, because he's, in a lot of ways, he's my mini me. And when I would go camping with my family, I was the only girl. I had two older brothers. And so while everybody else was setting up camp, I was walking around to the other campsites, seeing who I got to play with that weekend. And I made friends everywhere I went. And my son is like that, and he just doesn't realize it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he's switched schools a couple of times. We've moved a couple of times in his life. So this is his third school. And before starting school this last year, he's like, I don't know if I'm going to make any friends. And I said, dude, I've never seen you not make a friend on day one. Like, you were worried about this last year when you were going into, I think he was going into second or third grade. Yeah, it was second grade. He was going into second grade, and he walked into the classroom, and 75% of the kids were the same as first grade. And they were just like, Sander, and they were so excited, and it immediately alleviated that fear. And so I just remind him of these kinds of things, that you make friends everywhere you go, because I understand how the limiting belief works, where if you think I'm not going to make any friends, guess what? You're not going to make any friends.
Yeah, it is a real concern for kids going into school, like that, and even for adults, when we go to parties, or we go to networking, or we go to do whatever we do, people we don't know. It's like, like, do I really want to do this? It's going to be, but if it's not stopping you and you're walking through it, and that you could have resilience and power through it, and the bottom line is, if you're nice to people, they're going to be nice to you. And that's a it's a simple equation. that that
treat
that's
treat people the way you want to be treated,
treat,
right?
treat people, yeah, treat people the way you want to, or that's the golden rule. Yeah, but it does, but um that will garnish your friends. It's not always, if you just be yourself, and I'm sure, with your son, that he makes friends if he's a kind person, if you just be yourself. I understand that this is a little bit nerve-wracking, but you got it. You got this.
Yeah, there's something about confidence, and I don't remember exactly what I heard from someone, but it was that a lot of times we're attracted, when we feel unconfident, we're attracted to people that show confidence, whether it's real or not. They're exuding confidence, and you find that confidence attractive.
Yeah, it's the mark of a leader. It's the mark of
Hmm.
a leader, and it involves a whole bunch of I don't want to say skills. They're kind. Usually, they're helpful. They 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 talk to people. They don't put people down. They're nice to people. When you're unconfident, you can be loud and boisterous, but if you're knocking everybody else down to build yourself up, that's a true sign of not being confident. And you see it. I taught with 4 year olds, with the third graders, with the junior high. I worked in a small school, and for most of my career, and you see that there's that one kid who everybody gravitates to, and they're nice kids. I mean, the bottom line is they're nice kids. They're helpful. They're kind, and everybody has their moments, but for the most part, they're helpful. They're kind. They're considerate of others. They help people out. It's but that's innate. That comes from within. If you're not, you want to put yourself ahead of everybody else.
Yeah,
Adults would
insecurity.
be saying it's kind of the same thing with adults. I mean, it's just not as for me not as obvious because we know how to mask it better.
Mhm. Yeah. Or a lot of times I'm thinking of a couple of people in my life that, they seem very, very confident in who they are. But when you sit down and have a conversation with that person, so there's one person specifically that I've sat down and had this conversation with, and he said, I am the most insecure person you'll ever meet. But I put on this air of confidence because I don't want you to know how insecure that I am. And it's an interesting idea to me. In,
Insecure in situations, but yet you can be confident. You're not going to be confident.
Mhm.
There are going to be situations where you're not going to. It's not going to be your wheelhouse, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and you might deem it as insecure. And I'm not sure about this, but it may be that confident people feel their insecurity most because they're not used to it.
Mm, yeah.
So that when they're not comfortable, it's really glaring to them. It really stands out.
I remember reading a meme that was like, if you're not used to setting boundaries, you feel, you know, pushy or bossy, and there's like a list of three things, and I don't remember any of them, of course, but it's like when you're not used to this healthy way of being, it feels wrong but as you practice it, as you continue to go, practice being, whole and complete on your own, where you're not looking for somebody else's approval and you're not looking to please other people, then at first it feels awkward. And I do remember going through that as I went through some personal development myself, and I'm a recovering people pleaser. And I remember setting boundaries really felt weird, and and especially with family,
It's
because
selfish. You feel
yeah.
selfish. Yeah, yeah, but it's not. It's in the end. In the end, it's funny because I just spoke about boundaries in my Facebook group today, and if you hear people saying to you when you lose it because you've had enough, if there's a lot of, boy, you must be in a bad mood, or like we always do things that way, or that's you not setting your boundaries. That's not that's and you confuse people when you're clear. People treat you the way you let them treat you,
Mm,
basically.
yeah.
And it's not always easy to get clear, and what your boundaries are not always clear. Sometimes you think it's one thing, but you let it go and you let it go and you let it go. There are more there, but once you start setting your boundaries, and you don't do it all at one at a time, it gets to be, you get to see that everybody is more relaxed. It's less stressful. You don't feel like welcome mat or a screaming Mimi because you're at this tension. And the people who respect that are your people, and the people who don't are not.
Right. I do remember the first time that I was taught setting clear boundaries. And the example that was given in this lesson of setting a clear boundary was, I'm an entrepreneur. I work from home. I need from 2 to 3 to have quiet, uninterrupted working time. And improper boundaries would be like, hey guys, I'm working, leave me alone. A clear boundary is, hey guys, I'm working from 2 to 3. I need you to not interrupt me unless there's blood or broken bones. And I will come to you and let you know at 3 o'clock, you can come to me and, check in with me or whatnot. And then not only setting that boundary with your kids, with your significant other, but also having that boundary with yourself. So I'm going to stop at 3 o'clock. There's not just, I'm going to do one more thing, because when you're not, holding your own boundary, then the kids aren't going to hold their boundary, because mom doesn't mean what she says. She says she's going to stop at 3, but she doesn't really stop at 3. So I don't need to really not interrupt her.
That's well, she's going to go longer anyway. She's going to have time to make it up, or that you, every time the phone rings or you hear something out there, you say, "Is everything all right? Is everything?" That's not a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
That's a suggestion.
Right.
But yeah, it's to be clear and concise, and to know it for yourself. If you can't do that between 2 and 3, then there's no sense setting the boundary, or pretending that you are setting a boundary, because it confuses everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, where I record the podcast, in my house, there's not really a space where I could sit and record a podcast that's not in a common area. So my desk basically sits inside of our dining room, and on the other side of the dining room is the living room, and then behind me is the kitchen. And so there's not a lot of, like, I can't close a door and put a sign up that says don't enter, right? I'm busy, go away. So I have to say to them, like, okay, I'm recording a podcast. We need to have no talking in the background, please. And I will let you know when I'm done. And there's been times where I have to mute myself. If anybody ever watches my podcast and I'm covering my mouth like this, it's because I'm saying, hey, be quiet.
But the more you do it, the more it works.
Right.
The more it works. It's always, it's always a work in progress, but that doesn't mean you throw it out the window, unless it's really not working, and then you have to do something. But it's a work in progress, and you're building towards something, and it has to grow with you.
Yeah, and there was a time when I felt like my boyfriend wasn't respecting this boundary of my podcast, and I had to completely stop recording and reschedule for another time because I got upset, and I was like, I'm not going to be a very good interviewee at the moment. And so we ended up rescheduling, and I was super embarrassed. And then my boyfriend and I had a conversation, and he's like, I have no idea when you're recording a podcast. And I was like, oh, well, if you see the ring light on, it's a pretty good indicator that I'm recording, because I don't use it for any other reason than if I'm recording. And he said, and that specific day, he's like, I didn't even get to the point where I could see your desk before you were upset that there was noise happening. And I was like, oh, good to know. It's like we learned through this. And I think that people, when they learn about boundaries and they learn how to, communicate, they think that it takes a lot less work than it actually does. Like, there's a trial and error to communicating and setting boundaries. Like, sometimes, I mean, we are horrible communicators I don't know if it's this country or the world, but we're horrible communicators, and we make more assumptions than we ask questions for clarification.
a lot of my clients, the problems with their significant others or spouses, they don't do anything. I have to do everything, and I said, well, do you have specific? Do you ask them specifically? Well, I said I came in last night. I said I was too tired to do the dishes, and I sat down on the couch, and he didn't do the dishes.
Mhm.
Well, I need you to do the dishes, or I want you to do the dishes, or I don't want to do the dishes anymore. That's your job now. But then you also have to back off and let them do it the way they do it, because that's the control of running the household, or running the whatever the show
Yeah.
is something you have to let go. It's a hard thing, four grown children, and I am now married for 45 years. It took a long time, but yeah. Same guy. Same guy.
Good. I
I
thought it was
kind of
not, I didn't think you were adding it up cumulatively.
I kind of like him now, so okay.
Yeah. My son's job is to empty the dishwasher. And so one thing that he doesn't do the way that I do is the way that he puts the pans away. So all the pans kind of stack together so they're neatly in the drawer. And he'll just set the one pan on top of another like willy-nilly. And then there's no room. And so what I do is I'll come in and show him, hey, if you stack them this way, then there's more room. And it's usually at the point where he's like, Mom, there's no room in the drawer for this pan, that I come in and tell him.
That it's been in for the last 9 years.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's the same.
But it's like I remember a friend of mine had, when her daughter was 2, she was putting silverware away from the dishwasher into the silverware drawer. They weren't going where they were supposed to go, but it didn't matter because her daughter was learning how to do a job, and mom didn't have to do the job, you
Yes,
know.
absolutely, yeah, and that's what I mean about letting go. And sometimes you let go, and you could let them do it their way and come in and rearrange it your way if you're fanatical about your kitchen like I am. I have a galley kitchen, so I'm really fanatical about it. Or sometimes if they're willing to accept the help, you can show them how you do it in the beginning, and do it with them in tandem for the first few times. And sometimes they're just not going to do it that way. It's not in their realm of spatial conception, that all your brain should be on one shelf. All your cups should be on one shelf. It's not, they don't see it that way. They see a space and they stick it there. And if you're not willing to take back the job, then you kind of have to be willing to let them do it that way.
And I really think that for your sanity, you should let them do it that way.
Well, unless you're really, really, really obsessive about how things are looking in your kitchen. Like, I know
And
some people have open shelves, and they want them to look a certain way, but then let them do it, and you go in and fix it your way. That's a
there's also benefits to you showing, there is benefits in the long run for their life, of you showing them the specific way that you want it done. Because when you go to a job and your boss says, I want you to do step A, step B, and step C, and you're putting C before A,
it's not going to work.
it's not going to work. And, worst case scenario, you're going to lose your job because you can't follow directions. And that's when you're the mom and you're showing your kid how to put stuff away the way that you like it. That's them following steps A, B, and C. And my son, because he just needs to know why everything, will ask me, why? Why do you want it this way? And if I can't come up with a good answer,
Yeah.
better than, because that's the way I like it, I might be willing to negotiate how it
Right.
gets done. But in the case with the pans, like the big
Opening.
one goes on the bottom, and then there's more space when you stack it this way. It looks nicer and you can fit more things in the drawer. So I can explain
Right.
that,
Right.
you
And
know.
sometimes it's us, and sometimes it's not.
And it's good to be flexible, and it's good to be rigid, and they need to experience both. And I think it's healthy for you as mom to
And that goes back,
allow to be
yeah,
flexible.
that goes back to your gut. Like there's some things that have to be a certain way, and this is the reason why. And there's some things you could let slide. But if it's going to make you miserable, it's that's a boundary, I know. But everything is all intertwined when it comes to the human nature. We need to, if we're not keeping our boundaries, we're not going to trust our guts. It's not going to be and how far to push things and there's some kids who could do it and there's some kids who just really can't. It's just not in their realm, and that you would know as their mom.
Yeah. And the night before we went to camp, we were watching the Disney movie Robin Hood, because the camp they're going to has a Sherwood Forest theme. And so my son hadn't seen the movie yet, and I wanted him to kind of be familiar with the characters that,
With the fox.
yeah, with the foxes. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a cute movie. Um, and we were at my brother's house, and it was time to go after the movie was over, and the cousins were very animated through the movie. So my nephew had seen the movie before, and my son doesn't sit very well watching movies, especially if somebody else is being, chitter chattery. And so they had been doing that throughout the movie. And then I'm someone who falls asleep during movies. So I kind of had fallen asleep in the last 15 minutes, and we're getting ready to go. And my son is singing a song or making noises. And I said, honey, I need you to stop making that noise right now. And he goes, okay, I'll stop the noise, but can I ask you why? And I said, yes, I'm overstimulated right now, and I just need you to stop doing that. And he said, okay. And it was immediately no for me. That noise, I need immediately to stop.
Yeah, and some people would feel guilty about that, but it's not really. He's learning boundaries. He's learning to respect other people's feelings. You won't go off on him.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
It's good. It's good to, understand yourself, to be aware of what it is that makes you tick and what are your irritants and whatnot, and communicate that to your kids, because they emulate what you do.
And it's easy, it's simple, but it's not always so easy for parents to do it. Sometimes you have a hard time figuring these things out because there's so much noise coming in at you from everybody telling you what you should and shouldn't do, and that you're terrible if you yell at and I'm not promoting yelling at your child or raising your voice to them, but it's we're human.
Hmm.
It's sometimes a reaction and not a response that we
Yeah.
have. My thing is, if we could figure out things that bother us, we could figure out the response we should have so that we don't react in a
Yeah.
negative way. But yeah,
I'll
and
even do it backwards, where I'll react and then I'll be like, oh, that's not how I want to be as a mom. What created the reaction? What was the series of events? And then I'll go back to my son and I'll say, hey, that wasn't the reaction that I wanted to give you. What happened with me was the XYZ, and I'm sorry for losing my temper, and I will try to do better in the future. And I get the biggest kick out of him doing that back to me.
that's you, yeah, that's it. And emotional regulation, that's so important. And these are the things that a lot of times we're missing, the kids are missing in life. And a lot of times the kids are missing them because we don't have them. Life is so complicated and busy, and we're so worried about the next step and
Hmm.
what's going to happen that we're not focusing on the here and now. With don't be so worried about raising a good kid that you forget you have one now.
Oh, that touched me. Is
That's
there
like
a piece of advice that you want to share with our moms?
my advice is to trust your gut, and if you're having a rough time with that, this was not meant to do alone. I know we do it alone. Somewhere along the lines of our history, we are isolating ourselves as parents, and you may not like everything your parents did or your grandparents did, but there's value in their knowledge, whether the value is I'm never going to do that, or the value is this is a good way to do it. And so you need someone to talk to. Some You need support in it, and some people have the support of their friends. Some people it becomes like a um, can you top this fest? You know what my kids did today. Being a teacher, I see a whole gamut of things. But if you even if it's not a big struggle, if it's a little struggle, talk to someone, because it'll be better for everyone in the end.
Yeah.
You don't have to go it alone.
We all need support. That's been a running theme lately of the podcast, is that
Yes.
um is how we started. Somehow along the way we started isolating, like you said, isolating ourselves as parents, and in these nuclear families, and mom, dad, children, and that's it. Like, this is the family, and I have to get all of my needs filled by this nuclear family.
Not fair.
And it's like, when you're expecting your spouse and your children to fill all of your needs, that there's no way that two people on this planet can fulfill all of your needs, especially when you don't know what your needs are. And when you're,
Introspection.
yeah, you don't know what they are, you don't know how to ask for them, and they have their needs, they have their lives, and you're not, as much as we want to, like, we're not the center of their universe, and we have to be the center of our own universe and give ourselves what we need, and then find people to help where we can.
Yeah. We don't live in isolation. We don't. It's just even if we try, even if we want to, even if you're an introvert, other people are. You need other people.
Yeah.
Even if you see what you don't like about other people, you need other people
Yeah.
in it.
Is there a book that's been really impactful along your personal development journey?
Um, a long time ago, when I was teaching, I read Mindset by Carol. Well, actually, I went to a lecture by her when she was relatively unknown, I guess, and I loved what she had to say. And I read her book Mindset. It's about the closed and the open mindset, growth mindsets. That your mind is your uh, GPS. What you think is what is. I think that would be the book that. Um,
It was called Mindset by Carolyn
Carol Dweck, Dweck.
Dweck.
She was a
Okay.
pioneer in the growth versus closed mindset.
Yeah. I've taught, like, the difference between the two to a couple of groups that I'm in, and
Nice.
um it's and a lot of now people are using the entrepreneurial mindset versus the employee mindset, and they're very similar. The open and closed mindset.
Yeah. I mean, the people, before this, I didn't even realize that. Well, they're finding out more and more. The neuroscience is incredible. I love reading about that, and how the neuroplasticity in brain. People used to think that was it. You were born a certain way and you died that way, and that was it. And the fact that it's not is amazing.
Exciting that we can change our neural pathways. And the crazy thing to me is, I came to this realization this morning. I mean, I've known it for a long time, but it was like it smacked me in the face this morning, that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And I read a book called I Have to Be Perfect. And it's written for pastors' kids and missionary kids by a pastor's kid. And he's also a licensed therapist. And the introduction to the book talks about how our beliefs are created and how we can change our beliefs. So that's basically neuroplasticity. And the thing that I find interesting is that when I read that book in my mid-20s, that did not register in any way, shape, or form. But when I learned about it in my mid 30s, it became like my new life obsession. And I like fell in love with all things personal development related and changing your belief related, right? And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, did I just not read the introduction? Because I used to not read introductions and think that the introduction was like a waste of space, right? But this morning I was reading it and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I read this when I was in my mid 20s. How did this not impact me then? So I
You weren't
just,
ready for it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are so set that they you have to gradually lure them over. The other Jim Quick wrote a book, Limitless. It's fairly new. I think it's 3 years old or something like that. He actually gives you examples of how you can build your mind to remember things and change your mind. It's not as much about beliefs, but it's always when you talk about the mind, it's always about beliefs. So it's yeah, but he's very it's a practic. It's almost like a practicum how to change your mind,
yeah,
how to build your mind, build your brain cells.
yeah, I'll have to check that out too. Where can our listeners find you?
They can find me on Facebook in the Encourage Greatness group. It's a private community, so it's Facebook/groups Encourage Greatness, or on my website, which truthfully I don't do a lot with. So Facebook I'm on a little bit more, or they can, yeah, Facebook is the best, or they can call me if they want.
We'll leave a link.
In case you can't tell, I could talk about things like this forever.
Too. We can leave a link in the show description for your website as well as the Facebook group.
That's confidentfamilies.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today and having a fun-filled confidence conversation. This was a real treat.
Conversation. It was fun. It was.
Yeah.
And interesting, and I learned new things.
I know, right? Immediately know.
Immediately know. I love that. And the book, I have to be perfect. I'll have to go look for that one.
It's, I forgot about it. I mean, it's been at least 15 years since I theoretically read it. I'm like, I wonder if I just took the quiz in the back, because there was a quiz in the back to find out just how warped your mind was from being a pastor's kid. Wow. And I scored as high as you can score on that test. And if I know me and who I used to be, I think that was enough for me to just blame all of my faults on being a pastor's kid and move on. I've learned more.
Evolution. Well, evolution. You start with blame, and then you figure out that you have to do some introspection. Mm-hmm. That's the hardest thing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your audience. Thank you so much for the lively conversation. I really do appreciate it, and I hope your listeners do also.
Yes, and thank you for being here. And we'll have another episode of Imperfect Momming for you next week. And until then, keep healing. Bye, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AlysiaLyons.com. That's AlysiaLyons.com. See you next time.